My name is Emily and I'm 32 years old. Right now, I'm holding my brother's wedding invitation, and all I can think about is standing alone at my own wedding venue 6 months ago, staring at those empty family seats. That morning, my mother texted me, "We'll celebrate when we get back from Hawaii." The betrayal still burns deep in my chest. Now they're begging me to attend my brother's wedding, and I'm touching this RSVP card, remembering how they chose his vacation over my once in a lifetime moment. Before I share what happened, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe if family drama stories resonate with you. Trust me, this journey of betrayal and ultimate redemption is one you won't want to miss. Let me take you back to where this all began, because to understand why I made my choice, you need to know our history. For 20 years, I was the perfect daughter, the responsible older sister who never complained, never demanded, always gave. While my brother Jason played video games in his room, I sat at the kitchen table helping him with his homework, making sure he passed his classes. My parents would peek in, smile at me, and say nothing when Jason appeared hours later claiming he'd done it all himself. When college came around, I worked 3 jobs to pay my way through. I remember those nights stocking shelves at the grocery store until 3 in the morning, then heading straight to my 7 a.m. chemistry class. My feet ached constantly, and I survived on 4 hours of sleep and instant ramen. Meanwhile, Jason got a full ride from our parents. Not a scholarship, mind you. They paid every penny of his tuition, his housing, his meal plans, even his spending money. Mom would call me during my breaks at work to tell me how proud she was that Jason had made it to his morning class. Just showing up was an achievement for him. Nursing school was my dream, and I fought for it alone. I applied for every scholarship, took out loans that I'm still paying off, and worked as a medical assistant on weekends. The day I got my acceptance letter, I called Mom first, bursting with excitement. Her response was that she couldn't talk long because Jason needed help picking classes for his 5th year of undergraduate. Yes, his 5th year. He'd changed majors 3 times, each time starting fresh, and my parents never questioned it. They called it finding himself. I graduated with honors, passed my NCLX on the first try, and started working in the cardiac unit of our city's biggest hospital. That first Christmas with my nurse salary, I was so excited to finally give back. I spent weeks picking out perfect gifts for everyone. A cashmere sweater for Mom in her favorite shade of blue, the expensive golf club Dad had been eyeing for months, and even concert tickets for Jason's favorite band. Christmas morning came, and Jason showed up 2 hours late, empty-handed, still drunk from the night before. My parents. They thanked him profusely just for being there. Mom actually said, and I quote, that his presence was the only gift she needed. Then came Dad's surgery in 2020, a routine gallbladder removal that turned complicated. He needed care around the clock for 3 weeks. I took unpaid leave, used all my vacation days, and moved back home temporarily. I changed his dressings, managed his medications, helped him walk, bathed him when he couldn't do it himself. I slept on a cot in his room in case he needed anything at night. Jason visited once, one single time in 3 weeks. He stayed for 30 minutes, complained about the smell of antiseptic, and left early because he had plans with friends. When Dad recovered, they threw a family dinner to celebrate. Mom made a toast thanking everyone who helped, and she mentioned Jason's visit 3 times. My 3 weeks of care. She said I did what any daughter would do. It was during those long nights at the hospital when Dad was first admitted that I met David. He was sitting in the cafeteria at 2 in the morning, still in scrubs, looking as exhausted as I felt. His mother was in for complications from diabetes, and we started talking over terrible vending machine coffee. He listened to me vent about my family without judgment, shared his own stories of caring for his mom, and somehow made me laugh even in that sterile fluorescent-lit room. We exchanged numbers, and he texted me every day to check how Dad was doing, how I was holding up. 6 months later, David proposed during a quiet dinner at home. Nothing fancy, just the two of us, his grandmother's ring and promises of a life where I'd always be chosen first. We decided on a small courthouse ceremony, initially not wanting to burden anyone or make a fuss. But David's mom, Sarah, wouldn't hear of it. She insisted we have a real wedding, said every woman deserves her special day. So we planned a modest but beautiful ceremony for the following spring. The same week I set our wedding date and put down deposits, Jason announced his Hawaii trip. He'd been talking about it for years, but suddenly it was happening. 2 weeks in Maui with his buddies from college. Mom's reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. She pulled out her phone to look at resorts offered to help him find the best flights, even suggested he extend it to 3 weeks since he was going all that way. When I mentioned our wedding date, hoping she'd realize the timing issue, she waved her hand dismissively and said we could talk about it later. I tried to stay positive. Maybe she was just excited for Jason because he rarely planned anything. He was working part-time at our uncle's car dealership, a job he'd gotten through family connections, and showed up to maybe 3 days a week. Mom always said he was still finding his path, that some people just need more time to bloom. I was 32, established in my career, getting married, and still waiting for my bloom to be noticed. The responsibility pattern of our childhood never ended. Every family dinner I paid the check, while Jason forgot his wallet. Every holiday I organized and cooked while Jason showed up late or not at all. Every crisis I handled while Jason was too busy or too stressed. And every single time without fail, my parents found a way to praise him for the minimum while expecting maximum from me. I remember one particular Sunday dinner about 2 months before the wedding. I'd worked a 12-hour shift, but still showed up with a homemade pie because Mom had asked. Jason arrived empty-handed 40 minutes late wearing yesterday's clothes. Dad clapped him on the back, said it was great he could make it despite his busy schedule. His busy schedule that week had consisted of a fishing trip and playing video games according to his own Instagram stories. Meanwhile, I'd worked 60 hours planned wedding details every spare moment and still managed to bake that pie from scratch. Mom's only comment was that I'd used too much cinnamon. David watched all of this with growing frustration. His family was so different. They celebrated every achievement, no matter how small. They showed up for each other. They divided responsibilities fairly. Sarah had already taken me dress shopping twice, thrown me a small engagement party, and called me daughter. My own mother hadn't even asked to see my ring until 3 weeks after the engagement, and then only because her sister asked about it first. 3 months before the wedding, reality hit hard. I was planning everything completely alone, while David's family offered constant support at every turn. Mom had initially promised to help, sworn she'd be there for tastings and fittings, but she was always mysteriously busy with Jason's trip preparations. She spent entire afternoons at the mall with him, picking out vacation outfits, the right sandals, the perfect swimwear. She researched restaurants he should try, made lists of excursions, even bought him a new camera for the trip. The day I went wedding dress shopping should have been magical. I dreamed about it since I was little, imagining my mom tearing up as I tried on gowns, giving advice, sharing her own wedding memories. Instead, I walked into that boutique alone. The consultant's face fell slightly when I said it would just be me, then brightened professionally, and asked if my mom was running late. I lied and said she had an emergency. The truth that she was at REI with Jason buying hiking gear for Hawaii would have been too pathetic to voice. David's mom, Sarah, had heard about my solo appointment through David and showed up halfway through. She said she was just in the area, but I knew David had called her. When I stepped out in the dress, the one that would become my wedding dress, Sarah's eyes filled with tears, real tears. She stood up, walked around me slowly, touched the lace carefully, and said I looked absolutely beautiful. She held me while I cried in that fitting room, not just because I'd found my dress, but because a woman who'd known me less than 2 years showed more maternal love than my own mother had in decades. The venue selection was strategic on my part. I chose my parents' anniversary date thinking surely they'd prioritize it. 33 years of marriage had to mean something. When I told Mom, she barely looked up from her laptop where she was comparing Hawaii hotels for Jason. She muttered something about that being nice and went back to reading reviews. I stood there in her kitchen holding the contract for the venue, waiting for any reaction. Nothing came. Cake tasting was another lonely milestone. The baker had set up this beautiful spread, 6 different flavors, multiple filling options, elegant decoration samples. She kept glancing at the door, clearly expecting more people. When she finally asked where my mother was, I couldn't bring myself to lie again. I just said she couldn't make it. The woman's expression softened, and she spent extra time with me, telling me about her own wedding, making the experience less hollow. I chose lemon cake with raspberry filling, Mom's favorite flavors, still desperately hoping to entice her interest. The florist appointment was the same story. I picked roses specifically because Mom grew them in her garden, thought maybe that would spark something. I texted her photos of different arrangements asking for opinions. Her response came hours later, just one line. Whatever you choose is fine, busy helping Jason pack. Not even a preference for color or style, just complete disinterest in her only daughter's wedding flowers. Dad wasn't much better, though his dismissal took a different form. When I tried talking to him about feeling hurt, his response was always the same. You know how your mother is with Jason, he'd say, like that explained everything, like that made it acceptable. He'd add that I was the strong one, the capable one, that I didn't need them the way Jason did, as if needing and wanting were the same thing. The breaking point came after choosing invitations. I'd spent hours at the stationery store picking fonts and papers, designing something elegant but personal. The sample arrived and it was perfect. Beautiful cream cardstock with navy script, a small heart where our names met. I sat in my car holding that sample invitation and just broke down completely. Sobbed until my chest hurt, until my makeup ran rivers down my cheeks, until I could barely breathe. David found me there an hour later. He'd come home early from work because something told him I needed him. He held me in that parking lot while I ugly cried into his shirt, getting makeup all over his collar. He didn't try to fix anything or make excuses for my family. He just whispered over and over that his family would be mine now that I'd never plan another milestone alone, that I was chosen and cherished, and would never have to beg for scraps of attention again. His family proved that promise immediately. Sarah started accompanying me to appointments without being asked. David's sister Lindsay became my unofficial maid of honor, when my own cousins showed little interest. His brother Mark researched photographers when I felt overwhelmed. They created a group chat called Emily's Wedding Warriors, and they actually used it, sending encouragement and jokes and questions about how they could help. Meanwhile, my family's group chat was silent about the wedding, but lit up constantly about Jason's Hawaii trip. Photos of snorkeling gear he was considering, links to luau's they'd researched, countdown posts about days until paradise. My wedding was 45 days away, and no one was counting that. 2 weeks before the wedding, I made one last attempt at the family dinner table. I brought wedding favors I'd assembled myself, little bags of local honey with custom labels. Mom glanced at them, said they were nice, then immediately turned to Jason to discuss whether he'd packed enough sunscreen. Dad was scrolling through his phone. Jason was texting probably his latest girlfriend, who he'd been dating for all of 3 weeks. I cleared my throat and announced that the rehearsal dinner was Friday night, that I really hoped they'd all be there for the full evening. Mom finally looked up, and for a moment, I thought I saw something like guilt in her eyes. Then Jason complained that Friday was when he wanted to get his hair cut for the trip, and the moment passed. Mom immediately offered to book him an earlier appointment, maybe Thursday, so he wouldn't miss his preferred time. That night, David held me while I tried to understand how I'd become so invisible to the people who were supposed to love me most. He reminded me that their inability to see my worth didn't diminish it, that their priorities were skewed, not my expectations, that wanting your parents at your wedding wasn't asking too much. His words helped, but the ache remained. The week before my wedding should have been filled with joy and anticipation. Instead, it became the week I finally understood exactly where I stood in my family's hierarchy. I'd hand-delivered my parents' invitation 2 months earlier, making a special trip on my lunch break. Mom had barely glanced up from Jason's Hawaii itinerary spread across the kitchen table. She'd murmured something about putting it on the calendar, while highlighting beach restaurants on a map. That Monday, 5 days before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, I stopped by my parents' house to discuss final details. Jason was there, sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I entered and actually laughed. "Hope the wedding doesn't run long," he said, "our flight's 2 days after." I stood frozen in the doorway, certain I'd misheard. "You're leaving 2 days after my wedding," I repeated slowly, trying to process. Mom walked in from the kitchen, dish towel in hand, and her face did this thing it always did when she knew she'd done something wrong but didn't want to admit it. "Actually, honey, about that," she started, and my stomach dropped to the floor. "We need to talk about the dates." The revelation came in pieces, each one worse than the last. They'd found better flight deals, she explained, as if that justified everything. Significantly cheaper if they left Saturday morning instead of Monday. My wedding was Saturday afternoon. The math was simple and cruel. They were choosing to miss my wedding for a flight discount. Jason's already checked with work. Mom continued like this was a done deal and they're fine with him leaving earlier. We can celebrate when we return. We'll take you and David out for a nice dinner. Maybe that new Italian place downtown. She was already planning the consolation prize while ripping away the actual moment. I found my voice somewhere beneath the shock. I'll pay the difference, I said desperately. Whatever the cost changes, I'll cover it. Please, just take the later flight. Mom actually looked offended at this. Don't be ridiculous, Emily. We're not taking your money. This trip has been planned for months. So has my wedding, I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned to Dad, still hoping he might be the parent I needed. He was studying the wall behind me, avoiding eye contact. Dad, please, I said quietly. It's my wedding day. One day. Can't you talk to them? He shifted uncomfortably, cleared his throat. Your mother's already changed the flights, sweetheart. The fees to change again would be astronomical. Besides, Jason's friends are expecting them at certain times. It was the them that broke me. Not your mother and brother. Them. He'd already chosen his side, and it wasn't mine. Jason, still on the couch, hadn't even pretended to care about my distress. He was texting rapidly, and then my phone buzzed. I looked down to see a message from him sent while we were in the same room. A row of laughing emojis followed by vacation can't wait, sis. The casual cruelty of it, the absolute lack of empathy, was breathtaking. I left without another word. What was there to say? They'd made their choice, and arguing would only humiliate me further. In my car, I called David, barely able to get the words out through my tears. He left work immediately, found me parked at our apartment complex, unable to make myself go inside. His family's response was immediate and fierce. Sarah called within an hour of David telling her not to gossip, but to reassure. She offered to walk me down the aisle herself. David's dad, Robert, said he'd be honored to stand in for father-daughter traditions. Lindsay started planning ways to fill the empty family seats, so it wouldn't be obvious in photos. The rehearsal dinner 2 nights before the wedding became another exercise in humiliation. My parents attended, but briefly. They arrived 20 minutes late and left after 45 minutes, claiming they needed to finish packing. During their short appearance, they talked exclusively about Hawaii. Mom showed David's aunt photos of their resort. Dad discussed snorkeling with David's uncle. Jason spent the entire time on his phone, occasionally showing my cousin's Instagram models in bikinis, saying he hoped to meet someone like that on the beach. During toasts, David's family spoke about love and commitment and family. Sarah talked about gaining a daughter. Robert welcomed me officially to their clan. When it came time for my parents to speak, Mom just raised her glass and said, "We wish you the best." Not even our names, just a generic greeting card sentiment. Then she sat down and checked her watch. That night, after everyone left, I sat in our apartment looking at the seating chart. The family section on my side looked sparse, even on paper. Grandparents who'd passed, aunts and uncles who lived too far, cousins who were busy, and now parents and brother who simply didn't care enough. I made one final plea the night before my wedding, called Mom from my hotel room where I was staying with the bridal party. I was calm this time, no tears, just honest. "Mom," I said, "I'm only going to get married once. This is it. This is the day every little girl dreams about, and I'm asking you as your daughter to please be there." The silence stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. Then she sighed, that particular sigh that meant I was being difficult. "Emily," she said, using my name like a weapon, "don't be so dramatic. It's just one day. We'll have plenty of other celebrations. Jason's been looking forward to this trip for so long. Don't ruin it for him with your guilt trips." Guilt trips. Wanting my mother at my wedding was a guilt trip. The irony was that she felt no guilt at all. I hung up without saying goodbye. There was nothing left to say. Tomorrow, I would walk down an aisle alone, and they would board a plane to paradise. David found me sitting on the hotel bed, still holding my phone. He didn't ask what happened, didn't need to. He just held me while I grieved the parents I'd never actually had. The ones who showed up, the ones who chose their daughter, the ones who existed only in my imagination. My wedding day began with a text at 6:43 in the morning. I was sitting at the vanity in the bridal suite, hair in rollers, when my phone buzzed. "Have a beautiful day. Boarding now." Mom had added a plain emoji and a heart, as if those tiny symbols could soften the abandonment. I stared at that message until the screen went dark, then looked at my reflection. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My makeup artist arrived at 7, cheerful and excited, chattering about how beautiful the weather was for an outdoor ceremony. She'd done my makeup trial weeks ago, so she knew exactly what we were doing. She started working, then stopped after 20 minutes. "Honey," she said gently, "you're crying. We're going to have to start over." I hadn't even realized the tears were falling. They were silent, just sliding down my cheeks like my body was grieving without my permission. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She squeezed my shoulder, grabbed tissues, and started cleaning my face. "Don't apologize," she said. "Wedding day emotions are normal." But something in her eyes said she knew these weren't happy tears. She had to redo my face twice. The second breakdown came when Sarah arrived with the something borrowed a pearl necklace that had belonged to David's grandmother. She clasped it around my neck, adjusted my veil, and stood behind me in the mirror. "You are absolutely radiant," she said. "And you are so loved." The emphasis on loved broke something in me. We lost another 30 minutes to tears and repairs. David's sisters, Lindsay and Megan, rallied around me like protective angels. They kept my phone away when more texts came through from Hawaii. They filled the suite with laughter and music. They made sure my champagne glass was never empty, though I could barely sip it through the knot in my throat. Lindsay kept making jokes, Megan kept fixing my train, and they both kept saying how lucky David was, how beautiful I looked, how perfect the day would be. The photographer arrived for getting ready shots, and I had to pretend my mother was simply running late. We took photos of me with the bridesmaids, with Sarah helping with my dress, with David's grandmother's pearl necklace. Every shot that should have included my mother was carefully reframed. The photographer, bless her, never asked questions, just kept saying how stunning everything looked. At noon, 3 hours before the ceremony, the wedding coordinator knocked. She needed to know who would be walking me down the aisle. The question I'd been dreading. I opened my mouth to say I'd walk alone, but Sarah interrupted. "She'll have family with her," she said firmly. "We'll work out the details." The coordinator nodded and left, and I collapsed into Sarah's arms. 2 o'clock came too fast. The music started, and the bridesmaids began their procession. I stood at the back of the venue, hidden from view, looking at the seated guests. David's side was packed, every chair filled with people who'd come to celebrate. My side was scattered. A few work colleagues, some distant relatives, empty chairs with reserved signs that mocked me with their vacancy. The coordinator cued my music, those first notes of the wedding march. I took one step forward alone, and then felt warm hands on either side of me. Sarah had appeared on my left, Robert on my right. "We're your family now," Sarah whispered. "Let us do this." So I walked down that aisle with David's parents, and even through my veil I could see David's tears. When the officiant asked who gives this woman to be married, Sarah's voice rang clear and strong through the venue. Her chosen family does. There was a murmur through the crowd, some confusion, but David's smile was radiant. He took my hands, and his thumbs rubbed gentle circles on my wrists, grounding me. The vows were where I went off script. I'd written beautiful words about love and partnership, but standing there looking at David and his family who'd become mine, I added unplanned truth. "You and your family have shown me that family isn't about obligation or blood," I said. "It's about choosing to show up. It's about being present for the moments that matter. You've chosen me every single day, and I choose you forever." The reception started beautifully. David's family filled the gaps perfectly. But during our first dance, my phone started buzzing on the head table. Lindsay grabbed it and her face darkened. "Your brother is posting beach pics," she whispered. "During your first dance." I didn't look. I couldn't. I just buried my face in David's shoulder and let him hold me through our song. The mother-son, father-daughter dance portion arrived, and Sarah didn't hesitate. She took my hand and we danced while David danced with her. Robert cut in halfway through, spinning me around, making me laugh despite everything. The photographer captured it all, and those would become my favorite photos, dancing with the parents who chose me. During speeches, David's best man talked about how David had found his perfect match. Lindsay talked about gaining the sister she'd always wanted. Sarah spoke about love multiplying families, about how sometimes you find your people in unexpected places. My side remained silent. The friends who attended weren't close enough for speeches. The relatives present barely knew me. I excused myself to the bathroom after dinner, and that's where I finally broke completely. In a stall in my wedding dress, I sobbed for the parents who chose Hawaii, for the brother who sent laughing emojis for the family who couldn't be bothered. I grieved it all in that bathroom, letting it out, so I could return to the people who did show up. When I came back, David was waiting outside the door. He'd known where I was, what I was doing. He pulled me close, not caring about the expensive dress or the careful hair. "My parents don't deserve you," he whispered, "but I'm going to spend every day of our marriage making sure you never feel unchosen again." The rest of the reception was a blur of dancing and laughter with David's side. They circled around me protectively, making sure I was never alone, never without a dance partner, never holding an empty glass. They created so much joy that the empty chairs became less noticeable. The photographer later told me she'd never seen a family embrace a bride quite like that. As we left in a shower of sparkles and cheers, I looked back at the venue. David's family was still there, still celebrating, still choosing us. My phone had 37 messages I hadn't read. None of them mattered. The people who mattered were there, throwing birdseed and shouting love. That night in our hotel suite, David held me while I scrolled through Jason's Instagram. Beach pics, sunset shots, umbrella drinks. Every single one posted during my wedding. Mom had liked them all. The final insult was a group shot of them at a beach bar captioned, "Living my best life," posted at the exact time I'd said I do. Our honeymoon in Asheville was perfect and painful simultaneously. David had planned everything, knowing I'd need distance from the disaster. Mountain views, couples massages, hikes to waterfalls, and no cell service in many places. He'd deliberately chosen somewhere that would force me to disconnect. But even in paradise, the abandonment ached like a physical wound. On day 3, I blocked my family on social media. It was David's suggestion, gentle but firm. "You don't need to see their vacation while processing their absence," he said. So I clicked those buttons one by one. Mom, Dad, Jason, block, block, block. The relief was immediate, followed by crushing sadness. I was 32 years old, blocking my family on my honeymoon. We returned home to 47 missed calls and twice as many texts. The voicemail started reasonable, then escalated to hysteria. Mom's first message was casual, asking how the honeymoon was. By message 15, she was sobbing about how I'd cut them off, how cruel I was being, how she didn't raise me to be vindictive. The irony of her tears wasn't lost on me. Dad's messages were different, but equally manipulative. Disappointment dripped from every word. He called me petty, said I was breaking my mother's heart, accused me of punishing them for taking a vacation they'd planned for months, as if my wedding hadn't been planned for months too. The real shock came when I learned they'd returned early. Jason had gotten severe food poisoning from a sketchy beachside stand, spent 3 days in a Hawaiian hospital, then flew home miserable and dehydrated. Mom called it karma in one voicemail, then immediately took it back. But the word hung there. Even she knew somewhere deep down that they'd gotten what they deserved. They showed up at our apartment unannounced a week after we returned. David answered the door while I hid in the bedroom like a child. I could hear Mom crying, Dad's stern voice, Jason complaining about still feeling sick. David was a wall. "They weren't welcome," he said simply. They'd made their choice, and choices have consequences. We sent an expensive gift, Mom wailed loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "For your wedding, we sent it." David's response was calm. "No, you didn't. We've received every gift. Your names aren't on any of them." The silence that followed was deafening. They'd been caught in another lie, another manipulation. Dad tried a different approach. Family forgives everything, he said, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that used to make me fold. "Family shows up," David countered. "And you didn't. So forgive us if we don't consider you family right now." They left, but the siege continued for weeks. Flying monkeys in the form of aunts and uncles calling to tell me I was being too harsh. Cousins texting that everyone makes mistakes. My grandmother, who hadn't attended my wedding due to distance and health, called to say she was disappointed in my lack of forgiveness. When I told her the full story, she went quiet. I didn't know they missed it entirely, she said finally. Your mother made it sound like they just left early. 6 months passed in relative peace. I declined every holiday invitation. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's all spent with David's family, who welcomed me with warmth that never felt like pity. I missed my birthday dinner at my parents' house, and Mom sent a card with $100 bill like I was still a child who could be bought with pocket money. The extended family started to notice the divide. At Cousin Angela's baby shower, which I attended briefly, the questions were relentless. Where were my parents? Why wasn't I at Christmas? Had I seen Jason's new girlfriend? The answers stuck in my throat. Sarah, who'd accompanied me for support, fielded them with grace. Emily's focusing on her new marriage. She'd say, smiling warmly while changing subjects. Through all of this, David was my anchor. He found us a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Dr. Martinez was a revelation. She introduced me to terms I'd never heard but recognized immediately: golden child and scapegoat dynamics, emotional neglect, parentification. Every session peeled back layers of dysfunction I'd normalized for 32 years. She validated my pain in ways that felt revolutionary. Your parents missing your wedding for a vacation is abandonment, she said clearly. Your brother sending laughing emojis is cruel. Your father refusing to intervene is enabling. These aren't small slights, these are foundational betrayals. You're not overreacting. You're finally reacting appropriately to years of underreacting. The therapy helped me understand patterns I'd been blind to, how I'd been trained to expect nothing while giving everything, how Jason had been taught that his wants were needs while my needs were optional, how my parents had created a dynamic where I worked for scraps of attention, while Jason was celebrated for existing. Learning about boundaries felt like learning a new language. I'd never had them before. Setting Boundaries workshop at the therapy center was filled with others like me, adults, who'd been taught that having needs was selfish. We practiced saying no without justifying. We learned that boundaries weren't punishments, but protection. We discovered that the guilt we felt was not our conscience, but our conditioning. During this time, Sarah evolved from mother-in-law to mother figure. She called weekly just to check in. She included me in girls' lunches with her friends. She asked my opinion on things, remembered my preferences, celebrated my small victories. When I got promoted to charge nurse, she threw me a surprise party. My own parents found out through Facebook 3 weeks later. The growth was painful, but necessary. I was learning to expect more, accept less, and recognize the difference between what I deserved and what I'd been conditioned to accept. Every therapy session, every boundary set, every moment with David's family showed me what I'd been missing, not just at my wedding, but my entire life. Then the text came that changed everything. Group message, all caps: Jason's getting married. 3 exclamation points like this was news worth celebrating. He'd been dating someone for 3 months. 3 months and they were engaged. Mom was over the moon, already planning, already gushing. Our baby's getting married, she wrote. The same baby who'd laughed at missing my wedding. Extended family who'd barely acknowledged my marriage were suddenly available for Jason's. Cousins who'd been too busy for my wedding were clearing calendars. Aunts who'd sent cards instead of attending were booking flights. The unfairness of it burned, but more than that, it illuminated everything Dr. Martinez had been teaching me. The difference in their reactions wasn't about me. It had never been about me. It was about a sick family system that designated roles before we could even speak. Jason's wedding planning began like a carnival, while mine had been a funeral. The engagement party, which I wasn't initially invited to, became the talk of the extended family. Mom rented out an entire restaurant, hired a photographer, and created a Facebook event that garnered 75 attending responses. My engagement dinner had been Chinese takeout with just my parents, and they'd spent it discussing Jason's upcoming performance review. The last-minute pity invite came through my Aunt Patricia, who called confused. She'd assumed there was a mistake when she didn't see my name on the guest list. Mom called 20 minutes later, voice artificially bright. Of course you're invited, Emily. Must have been an oversight with the invitations. We'd love to have you and David there. The lie was so transparent it was insulting. We didn't go. David sent a polite decline, citing a prior commitment we didn't have. Mom's response was immediate and predictable. She left a voicemail sighing about how she'd hoped we could move past the petty grievances. Petty. My wedding absence was petty to her. 3 weeks into their engagement, Mom called with a request that stunned me, even knowing her audacity. Emily, honey. She started using the sweet voice that once made me desperate to please her. You did such a beautiful job planning your wedding all by yourself. We were hoping you'd help plan Jason's. You're so good at organization and you know all the vendors. I actually laughed. Not a bitter laugh or an angry one, just genuine amusement at the absurdity. She wanted me to plan the wedding for the brother who'd mocked mine. Use the vendors who'd watched me cry over empty chairs. Apply the skills I'd learned in isolation to make his day perfect. You're so good at planning, she continued, oblivious to my silence. You did yours alone, so you know how to handle everything. That last part was said without a hint of irony or shame. She was actually using my abandonment as a qualification. You planned alone successfully, so you can plan for us too. My response was calm, therapist-approved, and firm. No, I said simply. No explanation, no justification, just no. The silence stretched so long, I wondered if she'd hung up. Then came the tears, the manipulation masterclass I'd once fallen for every time. How can you be so cruel to your brother? He's family. Family helps family. Where was family when I needed help? I asked quietly. Where was family when I was choosing flowers alone, tasting cakes alone, crying in my car alone? Where was family when I walked down that aisle alone? Another silence. Then the click of her hanging up. She'd rather disconnect than confront the truth. Dad showed up at my work the next day. The charge nurse desk was busy, and he stood there in his suit looking out of place among the scrubs and monitors. Don't punish your brother for our mistakes, he said without preamble. Several colleagues looked up, sensing drama. Like you punished me, I responded, keeping my voice professional despite the audience. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just not participating. There's a difference. He stood there, jaw working like he was chewing words he couldn't swallow. Finally, he left, but not before several coworkers asked if I was okay. The story spread through the unit by lunch. Everyone was Team Emily. Mom's tearful voicemails increased in frequency and intensity. She deployed every weapon in her arsenal. Guilt about family unity, reminders of childhood memories when Jason and I were close, accusations that I was jealous of his happiness. That last one made David furious. Jealous, he said, of what? A rushed engagement to someone he barely knows. A wedding planned by the parents who abandoned yours. You're the one with the stable marriage and loving family. If anyone's jealous, it's them. Jason's fiancée Brittany reached out next. Her text was brief but revealing. I don't understand the drama. What's the issue with you and Jason? Can we talk? I considered ignoring it, but something made me respond. Ask about my wedding, I wrote. Ask where they were. Ask why. Then we can talk. She never responded. But according to cousin Angela, who loved gossip more than family loyalty, Brittany had asked and hadn't liked the answers. There was apparently a fight, Brittany calling Jason selfish, and Mom an enabler. It didn't last long. Jason could charm his way out of anything, and Brittany was 23, naive, and believed his version, where I was the dramatic sister who couldn't let go of petty grudges. The desperation escalated as the wedding approached. They came to our house as a unit, Mom, Dad, and Jason, like an intervention in reverse. David answered the door again, but this time I stood behind him, ready to face them. Jason looked annoyed, like we were wasting his time. Mom had clearly been crying. Dad wore his stern face, the one that used to mean I was in trouble. It's my wedding, Jason said without greeting. You have to come. The entitlement in those words, the assumption that his wants were my obligations, was everything wrong with our family in one sentence. Funny how have to only applies to me, I said, stepping beside David. I had to understand when you chose Hawaii. I had to accept Dad's silence. I had to forgive Mom's abandonment. But when I choose myself suddenly, that's unacceptable. That's different, Mom wailed, actually stamping her foot like a child. We explained the flights, the money, You explained why abandoning me was convenient, I corrected. That's not the same as it being right. And now you want me to pretend it never happened, show up with a smile, help, plan, participate, celebrate. But I learned from the best. Sometimes you just can't make it. Sometimes other things are more important. Sometimes family events are optional. You're ruining my wedding. Jason shouted, his face red, looking so much like the toddler who'd thrown tantrums when I got birthday presents. No, I said calmly. I'm just not attending. There's a difference. The same difference you taught me when you posted beach pictures during my first dance. When you sent laughing emojis about missing my wedding. When you turned my pain into your vacation entertainment. The silence was thick, heavy with recognition they'd never voice. Mom tried more tears. Dad tried more authority. Jason tried more anger. Nothing worked. Dr. Martinez had prepared me for this role, played these exact scenarios. I had my phrases ready, my boundaries firm, my resolve steel. Finally, I pulled out the RSVP card they'd sent, probably hoping proximity would change my mind. I filled it out in front of them, checking regretfully decline with steady hands. In the space for a message, I wrote previous commitment to my self-respect. I handed it to Mom, who looked at it like I'd slapped her. But you didn't do this for spite or vengeance. You did it for healing. You did it because attending would mean pretending the wound was healed when it was still bleeding. You did it because Jason never apologized, never acknowledged, never even paused in his entitled existence to consider your pain. They left defeated, and I felt something I hadn't expected: peace. Not satisfaction or revenge, just simple peace. The decision was made, the boundaries set, the pattern broken. For the first time in 32 years, I'd chosen myself without apology, without negotiation, without guilt. The morning of Jason's wedding, David and I woke up in a beach cottage in Monterey. We'd driven up the coast the night before, windows down, music loud, singing badly to classic rock. The Pacific stretched before us, endless and blue, nothing like Hawaii, but everything like freedom. I posted a photo of our breakfast with the ocean view. No caption needed. The timestamp said everything. My phone stayed mostly silent, but Sarah texted updates from the family gossip network. Your absence is noticed, she wrote. Half your mom's family asking where you are. Some asking why. The truth is spreading. Good, I thought. Let them see what they ignored before. Let them understand that actions have consequences, even when those actions are wearing white and saying vows. Emily and David spent the day building sandcastles, a childish activity that felt profound. We created elaborate structures, moats and bridges and towers, then watched the tide claim them without sadness. There was something healing about creating beauty that wasn't meant to last, about letting go without grief. David carved our initials in the sand, took a photo, then let the waves wash them away. Nothing's permanent, he said, except what we choose to keep building. Around the time Jason was probably saying his vows, we were eating fish tacos from a food truck's sauce, dripping on our shirts, laughing at nothing. An elderly couple at the next picnic table smiled at us. You look so in love, the woman said. Newlyweds. 2 years, I told her, but still feels new. She patted my hand. That's how you know it's right, dear, when the new feeling never quite wears off. Sarah's texts continued throughout the day. She'd connected with my cousin Angela, who was apparently live reporting the disaster. The venue was beautiful, but half empty. Mom had invited everyone she knew, but people noticed the family divide. Brittany's family filled their side while Jason's looked sparse. The irony was delicious. He'd gotten the inverse of my wedding, surrounded by strangers instead of loved ones. During what would have been the reception, David and I were on a sunset sail. The captain, learning we were celebrating our own anniversary early, brought out champagne. Other couples on the boat toasted us strangers, offering more genuine warmth than my family ever had. I thought about Mom's toast at the rehearsal dinner, that generic wish you the best, and compared it to these strangers raising glasses to love that chooses itself daily. That evening, my phone exploded. The reception was apparently a disaster. Jason had gotten drunk, Brittany had cried, and Mom had given a speech about family that multiple people recognized as hypocritical given my absence. Aunt Patricia had apparently asked loudly during the mother-son dance where the sister of the groom was. Mom had to admit I wasn't coming. The whispers spread like wildfire. Grandmother called David's phone since I wasn't answering mine. She'd finally gotten the full story from Patricia. Emily should have been there, she told David. Not at the wedding, at her own wedding. I failed as a grandmother, not seeing what was happening. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I understand now. David relayed the message, and I felt something shift, a tiny crack in the wall of hurt. The extended family began taking sides. Some remained loyal to Mom's version, where I was petty and unforgiving. But others, especially those with their own complicated family dynamics, understood. Cousin Angela switched teams completely, sending a long text about how she'd noticed the favoritism at family gatherings, but never said anything. I see it now, she wrote. Every holiday, every celebration. You serving while Jason sat. You organizing while Jason played. You invisible while Jason shined. Facebook became a battlefield I didn't participate in. David's sister Lindsay kept me informed of the drama I'd blocked myself from seeing. Photos from Jason's wedding were posted and dissected. Comments about the missing sister. Questions about family unity when one member was absent. Mom's friends defending her, while others wondered aloud how a mother misses her daughter's wedding for vacation. A week later, the real consequences began. Jason's marriage imploded almost immediately. Brittany had discovered he'd been texting other women throughout their engagement, something about options and keeping things open. She moved back with her parents, filing for annulment within 3 weeks. Mom called it a misunderstanding. Dad called it growing pains. Everyone else called it predictable. Mom's desperate voicemails reached new heights. This is all your fault. If you'd been there, if you'd helped plan, if you'd been supportive, this wouldn't have happened. The mental gymnastics required to blame me for Jason's infidelity were Olympic level. I didn't respond, but I did save the message. Dr. Martinez said it was a perfect example of the scapegoat dynamic, being blamed for things that had nothing to do with me. 3 months later, I had my own announcement. David and I were expecting. We told his family at Sunday dinner, and the joy was immediate and overwhelming. Sarah cried. Robert opened champagne. Lindsay started planning the nursery. We called David's extended family, sharing the news with people who celebrated us fully. The happiness was uncomplicated, untainted by conditions or comparisons. My parents found out through Facebook a post where Sarah mentioned becoming a grandma. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They'd found out about their first grandchild the same way I'd found out about their Hawaii plans, through social media instead of family communication. Mom's call came within minutes of the post going live. "That's my grandchild," she shrieked into my voicemail. "I have rights. You can't keep my grandchild from me. How dare you not tell me first?" The possessiveness over a child she'd never meet was peak narcissism. My grandchild, as if she'd earned that title, as if grandparent was a right instead of a privilege. I finally called her back, not out of obligation, but for closure. "Mom," I said, when she answered on the first ring, "you taught me that family is whoever shows up. You taught me that some things are more important than being present. You taught me that missing major life events is acceptable if something better comes along. I'm just following your example." "But this is different," she wailed. "This is a baby. This is family." "So was my wedding," I replied, "and you chose Hawaii. Now I'm choosing the family that chose me, the family that will show up for this child every single day, not just when it's convenient or photogenic, the family that will celebrate their victories and comfort their defeats, the family that will never make them feel like second best." "You can't do this," she screamed. "I'm the grandmother." "No," I said quietly. "Sarah is the grandmother. She earned that title by being my mother when you couldn't be bothered. She'll be at every ultrasound, every milestone, every birthday. She'll be the one teaching my child to bake cookies and telling them stories. She'll be the one they run to with scraped knees and broken hearts, because she shows up every single time." The silence on the other end stretched long before the line went dead. She never called back. Dad sent one email, formal and cold, about their legal rights as grandparents. David's lawyer friend responded on our behalf, explaining that grandparent rights in our state required a pre-existing relationship with the child. Hard to have a relationship with someone who doesn't exist yet and won't ever know you do. A year later, our daughter was born. We named her Grace, for the grace David's family had shown us, for the grace we'd found in releasing toxic bonds, for the grace of second chances with chosen family. Sarah was in the delivery room holding my hand, through contractions, being the mother I'd needed all along. The waiting room was full of David's family friends, who'd become siblings, colleagues, who'd become aunts. We never sent a birth announcement to my parents. They found out through the grapevine probably weeks later. Jason never met his niece. My parents never held their grandchild. And that wasn't my tragedy, it was theirs. They'd chosen Hawaii over my wedding, chosen Jason over me every single day for 32 years, chosen their comfort over my pain. Now I chose Grace's well-being over their feelings. The nursery Sarah helped decorate had a rocking chair by the window, where she read stories every evening she visited. Grace's first word was Nana, looking at Sarah. Her first steps were toward Robert. Her first birthday party was full of people who'd chosen to be family, not forced by blood, but bonded by love. Looking at Grace sleeping in her crib one night, David whispered that she'd never doubt her worth. She'd never beg for attention. She'd never accept crumbs when she deserved the feast. She'd grow up surrounded by people who showed up, stayed present, chose her daily. She'd know her value because everyone around her reflected it back. I realized then that breaking the cycle wasn't just about cutting contact. It was about creating something new, something healthier, something whole. Grace would grow up seeing what love looked like when it wasn't conditional, what family meant when it wasn't biological, what support felt like when it wasn't scarce. My wedding might have had empty chairs, but my life had filled with people who chose to fill them every day since. The family that missed my wedding for a vacation didn't just lose a day, they lost a lifetime. They lost first smiles and first words. They lost Sunday dinners and holiday mornings. They lost the chance to be chosen by someone who'd spent 32 years